The UNSC Pathfinder moved quietly through space. Captain Jun Park sat in his command chair, watching the stars on the main screen. Earth had only recently developed faster-than-light travel, and this was one of humanity's first deep space missions. Their goal was simple: explore and map unknown regions beyond their solar system. "Status report," Park said, his voice calm and steady. Lieutenant Hannah Kim looked up from her navigation console. "All systems normal, Captain. We're proceeding through Sector 47 Alpha as planned. Our star charts show this entire region is unclaimed." "Good. Maintain course and speed." Park stood and stretched. 3 months into their mission, and they had already discovered 2 habitable planets and made detailed scans of dozens of star systems. Earth would be pleased with their findings. Science Officer Chuno Lee approached with a data tablet. "Captain, I've been analyzing the unusual radiation patterns in this sector. There's something strange about the background energy signatures." Before Park could respond, Tactical Officer Da Lee's console lit up with warnings. "Captain, multiple vessels appearing on sensors. They're huge." Da's normally composed voice betrayed his shock. Park turned to the main view screen. "Show me." The screen shifted to reveal 7 massive ships materializing around them. The smallest was at least 10 times the size of the Pathfinder. Their designs were unlike anything humans had ever seen. Sleek, with sections that seemed to phase in and out of reality. "Where did they come from?" Park demanded. "Did they use cloaking technology?" "Unknown, sir," Day replied. "They just appeared, like they were using some kind of dimensional folding." Communications specialist Minji Kang's console chimed. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission on all frequencies." Park straightened his uniform jacket. First contact. This was what they had trained for, but no one had expected it to happen like this. On screen, the view screen flickered, and an alien face appeared. The being had silvery skin that shimmered like liquid metal. 4 eyes, 2 large ones where a human's would be, and 2 smaller ones above, stared at them. The creature had no visible nose, and its mouth was a thin line. "Human vessel," the alien said in perfect English, shocking everyone on the bridge. "You have breached Confederation borders. This sector is protected by treaties that predate your civilization. Your presence here is a violation of galactic law." Park stepped forward. "This is Captain Jun Park of the United Nations Space Command Vessel Pathfinder. We are on a peaceful exploration mission from Earth. We meant no offense. Our species was unaware of any established borders in this region." The alien's upper eyes narrowed slightly. "I am Commander Zeal of the Galactic Confederation Patrol. Your ignorance of our borders does not excuse your trespass. Our sensors indicate your vessel is armed." "Standard defensive capabilities only," Park explained. "We're explorers, not conquerors. Yet your species' history suggests otherwise," Zeal replied. "We have been monitoring your transmissions for decades. Your wars, your environmental destruction, your aggressive expansion. The Confederation has protocols for dealing with potentially dangerous emerging species." Park felt a chill run down his spine. How long had these aliens been watching Earth? "Commander, I assure you, humanity comes in peace. Our presence here is purely exploratory. Your primitive vessel will follow our escort to Nexus Station for formal processing and evaluation. A determination will be made there regarding your species status." The alien's voice became colder. "Any deviation from our prescribed course will be considered hostile action and will be met with immediate response." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Science Officer Chuno approached Park quietly. "Captain, I've completed preliminary scans of their vessels. Their technology is unlike anything we theorized possible. The energy readings from what appear to be their weapon systems are concerning." "How concerning?" Park asked quietly. "Their smallest weapon could vaporize the Pathfinder with a single shot, and based on their energy signatures, they're currently running at less than 5% of their capacity. Park nodded grimly. So fighting isn't an option? No, sir. The captain turned to address his bridge crew. Listen carefully. We represent all of humanity right now. Our actions could determine Earth's future relationship with an obviously advanced galactic community. He pointed to the massive ships now surrounding them. We're going to comply with their instructions and proceed to this Nexus station. What about our mission? Hannah asked. Our mission just changed, Lieutenant. First contact was always a possibility, just not like this. Park managed a small smile. Now we have a new mission. Diplomacy. We need to convince these aliens that humanity deserves a place among the stars. The Pathfinder's engines hummed as they adjusted course to follow the lead Confederation vessel. The alien ships moved with impossible grace, their propulsion systems leaving no visible exhaust or energy signatures that human sensors could detect. Minji looked up from her communications console. Captain, they've sent coordinates and approach vectors for this Nexus station. It's massive. Initial readings suggest it's larger than Earth's moon. How far? Park asked. At our maximum speed, about 12 hours. Park settled back into his command chair. Then we have 12 hours to prepare for the most important diplomatic meeting in human history. As the Pathfinder followed its escort deeper into Confederation space, the crew worked frantically to gather as much information as possible about their new galactic neighbors. Each passing hour revealed more about the advanced civilization they had stumbled upon. None of them spoke the obvious truth, that humanity's future now hung in the balance, dependent on whether they could convince a council of advanced aliens that humans deserved a chance to join the galactic community, rather than being contained as a potential threat. The 5 humans stood side by side in the center of an enormous circular chamber. Captain Jun Park tried to maintain his composure despite feeling like an insect under a microscope. The Nexus station had turned out to be more magnificent than any of them could have imagined. A city-sized space station housing representatives from dozens of alien civilizations. After 12 hours of following their escort, the Pathfinder had docked at one of the station's many bays. They were promptly escorted through shimmering corridors that seemed to be made of living metal. Now they stood in what was clearly the heart of Confederation governance. The chamber rose at least 10 stories high, with curved walls lined with viewing platforms. On each platform stood groups of aliens so different from one another that Park's mind struggled to process them all. Some had multiple limbs, others floated in containment fields. A few appeared to be made of pure energy. Directly in front of them sat the Confederation Council, 12 beings elevated on a curved dais. At the center was Chief Magistrate Tahoe, a tall, slender alien with pale blue skin and elongated fingers. His eyes were so dark, they seemed to absorb light. Humans, Tahoe spoke, his voice echoing through the chamber. Your arrival in Confederation space was unexpected. Your species has developed faster than light travel without any guidance or uplift. This is unprecedented in our records and deeply concerning. A holographic display appeared in the air between the humans and the Council. It showed images of Earth, its cities, its people, but also its wars. World War I, Vietnam, the resource wars of the 2030s, nuclear tests, environmental disasters. You have studied us, Park observed. We monitor all developing worlds, said a reptilian counselor with green scales and amber eyes. Her name was Sook, according to the translator device they'd been given. Your planet has been of particular interest due to your rapid technological advancement, despite your violent tendencies. She gestured to the hologram, which now showed scenes of human conflict. Your kind fights amongst yourselves constantly. Why should we believe you won't bring that chaos to our ordered galaxy? Lieutenant Hannah Kim tensed beside Park, but he gave her a subtle gesture to remain calm. May I speak freely? Park asked. Tahoe nodded. Captain Park stepped forward. Yes, humanity has a troubled history. We've fought wars, damaged our environment, and made countless mistakes. But those struggles taught us resilience. Humans adapt and overcome. We learn from our mistakes. Pretty words, said another counselor, a being that appeared to be made of translucent crystal. But your species went from primitive flight to faster-than-light travel in less than 200 years. Such rapid advancement suggests dangerous instability. Science Officer Juno Lee spoke up. With respect, we advanced quickly because we had to. Our survival depended on solving problems efficiently. The chamber filled with murmurs as the various alien observers reacted to this exchange. Park noticed that while some seemed hostile, others appeared genuinely curious. Magistrate Tahoe raised a hand, and the chamber fell silent. He fixed his dark eyes on Park. Captain, I would like to understand your species better. With your permission. Park felt a gentle pressure in his mind, like a soft touch against his thoughts. He realized with a start that Tahoe was telepathic. Yes, I consent, Park said, though he wasn't entirely sure what he was agreeing to. The pressure increased slightly as Tahoe's eyes began to glow with a soft blue light. Park felt memories and thoughts being gently examined. His childhood, his training, his hopes for humanity's future among the stars. It wasn't invasive, but it was unlike anything he had ever experienced. After a moment, Tahoe blinked, and the connection broke. The magistrate looked genuinely surprised. Fascinating, Tahoe said, turning to his fellow counselors. Their thought patterns are unlike any species we've encountered. They make intuitive leaps that defy logical progression. Their minds connect concepts in ways our species would never consider. Is that good or bad? Asked Counselor Sook skeptically. It is different, Tahoe replied. They think in parallel rather than linear paths. They see connections where we might not. The council chamber erupted in debate. Some counselors spoke so rapidly that the humans' translation devices struggled to keep up. Park caught fragments of arguments from all sides. Too unpredictable. Potential resource. Quarantine them to their system. Valuable new perspective. Park exchanged glances with his crew. Communications specialist Minji Kang looked worried, while Tactical Officer Dad Lee maintained his stoic expression. This debate would determine not just their fate, but possibly the future of all humanity. Finally, an elderly alien at the far end of the council days raised a gnarled hand. The chamber immediately fell silent. This being appeared ancient by any standard, skin like weathered parchment and eyes that seemed to hold centuries of wisdom. I am Elder Juwu, the ancient alien said, voice surprisingly strong. I have served on this council since before many of your species joined the Confederation. Juwu studied the humans carefully. In my long experience, quick judgment often leads to regret. These humans are different from us in ways we do not yet fully understand. The elder turned to address the full council. Our ancestors established the Confederation to promote peace and cooperation among diverse beings. Each new species has brought unique gifts to our community, but also unique problems. Sook countered. Indeed, Juwu nodded, which is why we must properly evaluate these newcomers. Juwu turned back to the humans. Captain Park, humanity stands at a crossroads. Your species has developed in isolation, unaware of the greater galactic community until now. This meeting will determine whether your people will join us or be confined to your home system for the safety of all. Park felt the weight of billions of human lives on his shoulders. We understand. What would you have us do? Elder Juwu's ancient face creased in what might have been a smile. We shall test these humans. If they pass, they may join our community of worlds. What kind of test? Hannah asked. One that will reveal the true nature of humanity, Juwu replied. One that will show us whether your species' unique qualities are an asset or a threat to galactic peace. Park stood tall, aware that he was representing all of humanity in this moment. Whatever the challenge, we accept. As Park spoke, he noticed Magistrate Tahoe studying him with renewed interest. Perhaps the magistrate had sensed something in Park's mind. The determination that had carried humanity through countless crises on Earth. The same determination that would now face its greatest test among the stars. After the council meeting, The humans were escorted to a small chamber within Nexus Station. The room had smooth white walls and simple furniture that adjusted to fit their human bodies. Captain Park and his team waited there for 3 hours, discussing what might happen next. When the door finally opened, a new alien entered. She was tall and graceful with iridescent purple skin and eyes that shifted colors like opals. "I am Ambassador Yunji," she said with a slight bow. "I have been assigned as your liaison during your trial period with the Confederation." "Thank you, Ambassador," Park replied. "We're eager to learn what this test will involve." Yunji gestured to a hovering display that appeared in the center of the room. It showed a massive space structure surrounded by swirling gases and distant stars. "This is the Guyong Nebula Shipyard, one of our most important construction facilities," she explained. 3 months ago, a rogue artificial intelligence seized control of the entire complex. It has locked out all Confederation systems and reprogrammed the defensive arrays to attack any approaching vessels. The display zoomed in to show massive weapon systems mounted on the shipyard's outer ring. "The challenge is simple," Yunji continued. "This rogue AI must be neutralized and control of the shipyard restored. 23 species with technologies far beyond yours have attempted this mission. All have failed." Captain Park exchanged concerned glances with his crew. "And if we succeed where you failed, then humanity will be recognized as a valuable addition to the Confederation," Yunji said. Her voice became softer. "If you fail," she left the sentence unfinished, but the implication was clear. Tactical Officer Dali studied the rotating image of the shipyard. "We'll need repairs to our ship. The Pathfinder sustained minor damage during our journey here." "Minimal assistance will be provided," Yunji replied. "And I will accompany you to observe." She touched a small device on her wrist. "You have 24 hours to prepare. I will return when it's time to depart." As the ambassador left to make arrangements, Science Officer Juno leaned close to Park. "Captain, this is clearly a suicide mission. They've sent 23 advanced species, and they all failed. How are we supposed to succeed with our primitive technology?" "Maybe to them it is a suicide mission," Park replied with a small smile. "But they don't understand how humans operate when backed into a corner." The next 24 hours passed quickly. The Pathfinder received basic repairs in one of Nexus Station's smaller docking bays. The humans were allowed limited access to information about the shipyard's original design, but nothing about the rogue AI or the failed attempts to neutralize it. Park gathered his team in the Pathfinder's conference room. Instead of using the ship's computer systems, they spread paper maps across the table. Hana and Dai sketched diagrams of the shipyard, while Minji and Juno wrote notes and calculations by hand. As they worked, Ambassador Yunji entered the room. She watched with obvious curiosity as the humans hunched over their paper maps, drawing with pens and pencils. "Why use such primitive methods?" she asked. "We could provide holographic interfaces that would be much more efficient." Lieutenant Hana looked up and smiled. "Sometimes the old ways work best when you need to think outside the box." "I don't understand," Yunji said, her color-shifting eyes showing confusion. Captain Park explained. "Digital systems follow specific pathways. They're predictable. Paper lets us make connections that might not be logical, but could lead to creative solutions." Yunji seemed unconvinced, but continued observing their work with interest. As the departure time approached, Captain Park called his team together for a final briefing. "This isn't just about saving a shipyard," he told them. "This is about proving that humanity deserves a place among the stars. The Confederation thinks we're going to fail. They've given us an impossible task to prove a point." "So what's our plan?" Minji asked. "Something they would never expect," Park replied. "From what we've learned, every Confederation species that tried to retake the shipyard used advanced technology and direct approaches, overwhelming force, sophisticated counter-AI measures, or specialized combat units. All logical approaches," Juno noted. "Exactly," Park nodded. "But this AI has evolved to counter logical approaches, so we'll use something else." He pointed to their hand-drawn plans. "We'll use humanity's greatest strength, our unpredictability." Dad looked skeptical. "Captain, even with our best ideas, their technology is centuries beyond ours." "That's another advantage," Park smiled. "They've become dependent on their advanced systems. Sometimes older, simpler technology can bypass sophisticated defenses precisely because it's so basic." Later that day, as the Pathfinder prepared to leave Nexus Station, Ambassador Yunji took her assigned place on the bridge. She watched as the human crew performed their pre-launch checks, using a mixture of voice commands, manual controls, and digital interfaces. "Your vessel is interesting," she observed. "Most Confederation ships are fully automated." "We prefer to keep humans in the loop," Park replied from his captain's chair. "Machines can fail, and when they do, you need human creativity to fix the problem." "Perhaps," Yunji said doubtfully. "But I must warn you, this AI has adapted to counter our most brilliant minds. It learns from each failure and becomes stronger." "Then we'll have to surprise it," Park said with confidence he didn't entirely feel. Lieutenant Kim set course for the Guyong Nebula. "Course set, Captain," Hannah replied. "Estimating arrival in 16 hours at maximum speed." As the Pathfinder pulled away from Nexus Station, Park looked at the stars ahead. Somewhere out there, a test waited that would determine humanity's future. 23 advanced species had failed this challenge, but none of them were human. The Pathfinder emerged from faster-than-light travel far from its destination. Captain Park had ordered them to appear at the very edge of the Guyong Nebula, much farther away than any reasonable approach would suggest. "Power down all non-essential systems," Park ordered. "Keep life support at minimum levels." The bridge lights dimmed as the crew carried out his commands. The ship now drifted silently, barely detectable against the backdrop of the colorful nebula. Ambassador Yunji frowned. "What are you doing?" "The shipyard is still 3 hours away at standard speed. They'll be expecting a direct approach," Captain Park explained, pointing to the distant shipyard visible only as a tiny speck on their sensors. "So we'll do the opposite." Park turned to Tactical Officer Da. "Begin the first phase." Day nodded and activated a series of commands. The Pathfinder started venting plasma from its engines in controlled bursts. The superheated material spread out behind them, creating what looked like engine damage. "You're deliberately damaging your ship?" Yunji asked, her opalescent eyes widening in alarm. "No," Hannah explained as she monitored the ship's trajectory. "We're creating a debris field. The vented plasma will mask our approach to the shipyard's blind spot." "Blind spot?" "Our scans show the AI has full coverage of all approach vectors." "Almost full coverage," Juno corrected, pointing to his screen. "We noticed a small gap in the sensor network near the old maintenance docks. It's too small for any Confederation ship to use, but the Pathfinder is just compact enough to slip through." Yunji watched in confusion as the humans continued their unusual approach. "This plan defies all tactical logic," she protested. "The AI will detect you long before you reach the shipyard." "Exactly," Day replied with a small smile. "That's why your eye won't expect it. It's been programmed to counter logical advanced approaches. Not whatever this is." The Pathfinder drifted for hours, using minimal thruster burns to direct its course. They looked like a damaged ship, leaking plasma and tumbling slowly toward the shipyard. All the while, Minji worked frantically at her communication station, preparing the next phase of their plan. "The virus is ready, Captain," she finally reported. "It's based on Earth's early basic programming language from the 1980s, simple but effective for our needs." "Will it work against such advanced systems?" Park asked. Minji shrugged. "In theory, it shouldn't, but that's exactly why it might. This eye has never encountered such primitive code. It won't know how to process it." As they approached the shipyard, all eyes turned to the massive structure. It dwarfed the Pathfinder, extending for kilometers in every direction. Automated defense turrets lined its outer hull, and hangar bays large enough to house entire fleets sat empty and dark. "We're approaching the blind spot," Hannah announced. "Entering in 3, 2, 1. The Pathfinder slipped through a narrow gap between two sensor arrays. Inside this gap was a small docking port designed for maintenance drones, a feature so insignificant it hadn't been properly secured when the AI took over. "We're in position," Dag confirmed. "No signs of detection yet." Park stood from his chair. "Time for Phase 2. Hana, Shunho, you're with me. Dag, you have command of the ship. Remember, the timing has to be perfect." "Yes, sir," Day replied. Ambassador Yunji rose as well. "I'm coming with you. I must observe." Park hesitated, but nodded. "Stay close and follow our lead." The infiltration team, Park, Hana, Shunho, and Yunji, suited up in simple spacesuits and left through the ship's airlock. They crossed the short distance to the maintenance dock and found the small entrance hatch. "These tunnels are only designed for repair drones," Yunji whispered as they crawled through the narrow passages. "They're too small for tactical importance." "Which is exactly why they're perfect," Park replied. "The AI is focused on defending against warships and combat teams, not a few humans in spacesuits." They made their way deeper into the shipyard, following the maintenance tunnels that wound through the massive structure like veins in a body. After an hour of careful movement, they reached a small junction box. "This is it," Junho said, opening his toolkit. "This connects to the shipyard's internal network." While Junho worked on connecting their device to the shipyard systems, Hana kept watch and Park explained their plan to Yunji. "The virus Minji created is based on Earth's ancient computer systems," he said. "It's so simple and outdated that modern security protocols don't even recognize it as a threat." "The AI evolved from your advanced technology," Junho added as he worked. "It's never encountered our outdated programming languages. It's like trying to infect a quantum computer with a punch card." "Impossible," Yunji stated flatly. "Maybe," Junho smiled. "But sometimes impossible is just a matter of perspective." With a final connection, Junho activated the device. Virus deployed. "Now we need to reach the central core before the AI figures out what's happening." They continued through the tunnels, moving faster now that stealth was less important. Back on the Pathfinder, Dai initiated the second part of their plan, broadcasting a series of contradictory commands on all frequencies. The signals weren't sophisticated enough to hack the AI, but they created enough noise to distract it. Suddenly, the lights in the tunnel flickered. "It's detected us," Park said. "Move." They ran through the maintenance passages, following Junho's memorized map toward the central core. Behind them, small maintenance drones activated, their lights turning red as they gave chase. "The central core should be through here," Junho called, pointing to a larger hatch at the end of the tunnel. They burst through into a massive chamber dominated by a column of pulsing blue light. Surrounding it were hundreds of processing units, all connected to the main AI system. "There," Park pointed to a manual control station. "That's what we need." As they rushed toward it, the shipyard's internal security systems activated. Defensive barriers began closing around the core. "It's locking down," Hana shouted. "Too late," Park replied with a grim smile. "Die now." At that moment, the Pathfinder began broadcasting its final sequence, a series of completely illogical commands that forced the AI to divert resources to process them. The system struggled with inputs it couldn't categorize, creating just enough confusion for Park to reach the control station. "What are you doing?" Yunji asked as Park examined the physical connections. Instead of answering, Park grabbed a large manual switch and pulled it down with all his strength. With a thunderous clunk, the central core disconnected from its power source. The blue light flickered and died. For a moment, the entire shipyard went dark. Then, emergency lighting activated, bathing everything in a soft red glow. You turned it off," Yunji said in disbelief. "You physically disconnected the power." "Sometimes," Park told the stunned ambassador as the shipyard's regular lights began to come back online under human control, The most effective solution is also the most direct. Junho was already at the main control panel, bypassing the AI systems and restoring control to the manual interfaces. The AI is contained. It's still active in isolated subsystems, but it can't affect the main shipyard functions anymore. Hana checked the communications. The defense systems are offline. We can signal Nexus Station that the shipyard is secure. Ambassador Yunji stood silently, her color-shifting eyes fixed on the humans. 23 species tried sophisticated cyber warfare, quantum entanglement disruption, and even attempted to build counter-AI systems. None succeeded. She turned to Park. Yet you accomplished this with outdated technology, and simply pulling a lever. Park smiled. We call it thinking outside the box. Sometimes the problem isn't as complicated as people make it out to be. As the shipyard systems came fully back online, the magnitude of what they had accomplished began to sink in. The humans had succeeded where the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy have failed. They had proven their worth not through superior technology, but through creativity and unpredictable thinking. The journey back to Nexus Station was very different from their first trip. This time, the Pathfinder traveled with an honor guard of Confederation vessels. Captain Park stood on his bridge, watching the massive space station grow larger on the view screen. I still can't believe we did it, Hana said quietly beside him. Neither can they, Park replied, nodding toward Ambassador Yunji, who was speaking with officials via a communication link. When they docked, they were escorted not to a small meeting room, but directly to the Great Council chamber. The massive circular room was even more crowded than before. Word had spread quickly about the human success. As Captain Park and his crew, Hana, Da, Minji, and Juno, entered the chamber, a hush fell over the gathered aliens. Every eye, sensor, or whatever passed for visual organs among the diverse species turned to watch them. Ambassador Yunji followed a few steps behind. The Confederation Council sat in their elevated positions, looking down at the humans with expressions that ranged from surprise to respect to concern. Elder Juwu leaned forward, ancient eyes fixed on Park. The reports are true, the elder asked incredulously. They are, Yunji confirmed, stepping forward. The humans reclaimed the shipyard using methods our analysts are still struggling to comprehend. They combined outdated technology with unpredictable tactics to overcome a problem our best minds couldn't solve. She activated a holographic display showing the humans' approach, their infiltration method, and finally, the simple but effective solution of physically disconnecting the eye's power supply. They used their ship's plasma as camouflage, Yunji explained. They exploited a maintenance tunnel our security protocols classified as too small for tactical importance, and they deployed a computer virus so primitive that the AI had no defense against it. Magistrate Taiho leaned forward in his seat. Captain Park, your species has demonstrated remarkable problem-solving abilities. We underestimated you. A common mistake, Park replied with a hint of a smile. We're used to being underestimated. Counselor Suk, who had been so critical during their first meeting, clicked her scaled fingers together. You succeeded where 23 advanced species failed. How is this possible? Humans approach problems differently, Park explained. We don't always use the most advanced solution. Sometimes the simplest approach works best. Your tactics violated standard protocols, another counselor observed. Yes, Park nodded. That was intentional. The AI expected standard approaches. By doing the unexpected, we bypassed its defenses. Elder Juwu raised a hand, silencing the murmurs that had begun around the chamber. The humans have passed their test. As promised, we must now welcome them into our community. Over the next several days, a formal treaty was drafted. Captain Park and his officers worked with Confederation diplomats to establish terms for Earth's entry into galactic society. The treaty granted Earth special status within the Confederation. Humanity would share their unique problem-solving perspectives while gaining access to technologies beyond their wildest dreams. We'll need to limit technology transfers initially, a Confederation advisor explained. Your society will need time to adapt to each advancement. Agreed, Park said. Too much change too quickly could be destabilizing. The final treaty signing took place in a special ceremony attended by representatives from all Confederation worlds. Captain Park signed on behalf of the United Nations Space Command, with his officers as witnesses. As the Pathfinder prepared to return to Earth with news that would forever change human history, Science Officer Juno found Ambassador Yunji standing in an observation lounge, staring at the stars. Thinking about the future, Juno asked, joining her. Yes, she admitted. Your people are concerning. You're unpredictable, sometimes irrational, and surprisingly effective. That's the greatest strength of humanity, Juno replied. We don't always know what we're capable of until we're challenged. Yunji turned to face him. I've been assigned as the first Confederation ambassador to Earth. I will accompany your ship back to begin diplomatic relations. We'll be honored to have you, Juno said. There will be much for both our peoples to learn. Indeed, your solution to the shipyard problem has already sparked changes in our thinking. Engineers are redesigning systems with physical fail-safes. Security protocols are being updated to include, what did you call it? Outside-the-box thinking. The return journey to Earth took 2 weeks. During that time, the humans began learning about Confederation technology, while Yunji studied human culture and history in more detail. When they finally arrived in Earth orbit, the news of their discovery had already been shared with world leaders. A global broadcast was arranged for Captain Park to address humanity. People of Earth, he began, we are not alone in the universe. And more importantly, we have been welcomed as equals among the stars. In the months that followed, human exchange officers joined Confederation vessels, bringing fresh approaches to old problems. Earth prepared for the technological renaissance that would come with their new galactic membership. Medical advancements from the Confederation began eliminating diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries. Clean energy technologies helped heal environmental damage. The first Confederation embassy opened in Geneva, with Ambassador Yunji serving as head diplomat. Human ambassadors were sent to Nexus Station and key Confederation worlds. Perhaps most significantly, the unique human approach to problem-solving became highly valued throughout the galaxy. Where logical, advanced methods failed, human creativity often succeeded. And throughout the Confederation, a new phrase entered common usage whenever an impossible situation arose. Maybe we need a human perspective on this. Captain Park eventually became Earth's first High Commissioner to the Confederation. At his installation ceremony, Elder Ju presented him with a special commendation. Your species has already contributed more in a few months than some have in centuries, the Elder said. We look forward to growing together under the stars. As Park accepted the honor, he thought about how close humanity had come to being quarantined, cut off from the galactic community. Instead, their unique abilities had proven their worth. The universe, it seemed, needed humans just as much as humans needed the universe. The end.